The Syrian army has entered a strategic town near the Turkish border. It was invited by the Kurdish-led militia that controls the area to help defend it against the Turkish attack. Rebel fighters backed by Turkey have been massing outside the town and in anticipation of the U.S. military pulling out of Syria. Turkey has threatened an assault on the Kurdish forces who were allied with the outgoing American troops. The Turkish president says he'll leave the town alone if the Kurds leave the area. Let's turn now to Rebecca Collard, who is following developments from Beirut. Rebecca, what more do we know about the current situation there?
Well, Natasha, as you outlined, quite a complicated situation with a number of fronts in Manbij and around Manbij today. And I think very complicated, very important to understand what's going on right now in Syria. So as you said, both pro-government forces and rebel forces backed by Turkey are moving toward Manbij. Now, the Syrian government says that they have actually reached the inside of the city. They have raised the Syrian flag for the first time in probably 6 years inside of the city itself. That has been disputed by some sources on the ground. But why don't we talk about how we got to this point, Natasha? So Manbij was taken from the government by Syrian rebels in 2012. Government forces fled. After that, ISIS took the city. And then in 2016, these Kurdish forces that currently control Manbij pushed in and pushed ISIS out with the help of U.S. forces. Now, they did that across northern Iraq, taking swaths of territory from ISIS fighters with the help of the U.S. Now, Turkey has been clear from the beginning that it does not want these Kurdish forces on its border. You know, it fought a decades-long war with its own Kurdish separatists and said that this is unacceptable, that it won't allow these Kurdish forces to be on its border. Now, as you said, this surprise decision by the U.S. last week to withdraw has made the Kurds feel vulnerable to attack from Turkey. Of course, while U.S. troops are there, Turkey is very unlikely to attack the Kurdish forces. But now, as the U.S. forces leave, these Kurdish forces fear that Turkey will start this offensive to Manbij after so many years.
Okay, Rebecca, we just had a small glitch with the connection. Hopefully it sustains itself, because I did want to ask you, it's difficult to predict how these situations are going to play out, but what are you anticipating in the days ahead?
Well, I think that there seems to be no other choice for the Kurds but to accept that the government comes back into Manbij if the U.S. troops leave. And this, of course, I think Manbij is just an example of what we could see across northern Syria as U.S. troops leave, because the Kurds feel so vulnerable. They'll ask the government to come back, preferring to sacrifice the bit of autonomy they've had in the north of the country over facing a Turkish invasion. So what we could see if a deal is not reached somehow between these various factions is the Syrian government retaking control of Manbij in order for the Kurds to push off this Turkish offensive, and possibly after Manbij, swaths of territory, and the Syrian government could move back into this territory in north and eastern Syria without firing a single bullet because of these U.S. troops leaving, Natasha.
Okay, Rebecca Collard reporting from Beirut. Thank you.